That's right. We'll put his number on screen. He actually does answer the phone call sometimes. So I want to start somewhere really lighthearted. I like to start things out easy, kind of family friendly. Let's talk about dismantling Islam.
Yeah, that's what I love to do.
Where do you want to begin?
I mean, where to begin? Islam is a danger to the West. It is a violent religion. There is a reason we say our values are Judeo-Christian and not Judeo-Christian Islamic, because the Islamic world evolved in a completely different milieu than what Christianity did. They have completely different values. Whereas we are going to prioritize love, charity, they're going to prioritize honor, order, authority. It's very much a religion based around conquest. The Islamic world will divide everything into two houses: the House of Islam and the Dar al-Harb, which means the house of war. So if you're not in Islam, they're at war with us. So just think about that. So, and this is what comes up in research. So much research has been published on Islam. A famous researcher named Davis Brown has published a multitude of studies. He found that Christianity was negatively associated with more war and conflict. Buddhism was non-significant, so it didn't go either way, but Islam was positively associated. So it's not just hypothetical. We actually have bona fide research showing Islam leads to more violence. But it's also extremely easy to debunk Islam, and I can do it in 20, 30 seconds, actually. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So people don't realize this, but when you read the Quran, it doesn't actually teach what Muslims teach. Muslims will teach you that the Bible's been corrupted. Muhammad came to correct it and to give the true revelations. The Quran doesn't say that. It says the opposite over and over again. Surah 2:4, Surah 241, 291, 2101. Over and over again, the Quran claims you should believe in the Quran, Christians and Jews, because the Quran is confirming your scriptures. Red flag should be going up. What are you talking about? Surah 568 goes so far and it says, "O people of the book, Jews and Christians, you have nothing to stand on unless you observe the Torah, the gospel, and what has been revealed to you from your Lord." Surah 547. Christians are to judge by the gospel, not the Quran. Well, wait a minute. That creates a problem. Allah is telling Christians to believe in the scriptures they have, which would be the Old and New Testament, those canons. Okay, so if we're to believe in those scriptures, we can read them and go, well, they contradict the Quran. We have to judge that the Quran is false. But let's say our scriptures have been corrupted like Muslims say. That also means Islam is false, because Allah is telling us to judge by corrupted scriptures. So either way, Islam is false. If our scriptures have been preserved, if they're reliable, if they're the authoritative words of Allah, Islam is false, because the Quran tells us to judge by them. We have to judge Islam as false. If our scriptures have been corrupted, then Allah is telling us to judge by corrupted scriptures. Either way, Islam is false. That's what we call the Islamic dilemma, because it's two horns, a dilemma. You have two options. Our scriptures have been corrupted. Our scriptures have not been corrupted. Both lead to Islam being false because of what the Quran says.
So is Allah fake?
Yeah. Whoever came up with the Quran was a moron. How ignorant do you have to be to claim over and over again, I'm confirming your scriptures, I'm confirming your scriptures, and then just constantly contradict our scriptures? What the best explanation is Muhammad was illiterate. He thought he was a prophet. He really did. And he just thought whatever he was going to say would confirm the scriptures the Jews and Christians have. But when the Jews and Christians come and they contradict Muhammad, he just assumed in his messed up brain, they're not agreeing with the scriptures that Allah gave them. So there's a problem with them, not their scriptures. I know that I'm in agreement with their scriptures because I'm a prophet. That's what was going on in Muhammad's head. And then he accidentally created the Islamic dilemma.
The Prophet Muhammad married a 6-year-old?
Yes. Yeah.
What more can we say on that?
Yeah, this is a huge issue for Muslims. A Muslim apologist named Muhammad Ajab did an informal poll. He's like, when you doubt Islam, asking Muslims, when you doubt Islam, what are the biggest issues? And he listed things like arguments from atheists, arguments from other religions, the failure of the Muslim civilization to take over the world, or the moral problems of Muhammad. The biggest option was the moral problems of Muhammad, followed by the failure of the Islamic civilization to conquer the world. Those were the two biggest problems for Muslims. So think about that. It's not arguments for Christianity. It was, wow, Muhammad did some pretty evil things. He married a 6-year-old and he consummated that marriage when she was 9. There is no way to justify that. That's evil. But you know what's even worse? The Quran says in Surah 33 that Muhammad is an excellent moral example. It says in Surah 4, you have to submit to all of Muhammad's decisions. In other words, turn off your brain, stop thinking whatever Muhammad said you have to go with. So if he was okay consummating a marriage to a 9-year-old, you have to be okay with it too as a Muslim. So that's a huge problem. So if what Muhammad did was immoral and wrong, that means Allah was wrong in the Quran. Because he said Muhammad's an excellent moral example, you have to submit to all of his decisions. But it gets even worse. Because in Surah 65:4, Allah gives permission for you to sleep with any girl at any age. He's talking about waiting periods in this section. So let's say a woman gets divorced. How long can you wait before you remarry her? Well, you got to wait for a period of she's got to go through her period so you know she's not pregnant from the other man. But what if you have a woman who is past the age of childbearing years? Well, he says you got to wait 3 months. But then he adds, what about a woman or a female who has never had a period? You got to wait 3 months. And all of the tafsirs, these are the commentaries on the Quran, like Ibn Kathir, for example, they will say this is referring to girls who have not yet reached the age of puberty. So as bad as Muhammad was, Allah is even worse because he didn't set a minimum age. You could marry a girl as young as you want, and you can consummate that marriage. You can then divorce her. The next guy's got to wait 3 months. Then he can consummate the marriage with her, then divorce her, then wait 3 months. All of this before puberty because of what the Quran says. And now, Muslims will push back and say, but Muhammad waited till 9, so we do too. Wow, that is so much better. But it just goes to show you how bad the hadith is. The Quran is even worse.
Did Islam fail to conquer the globe because they couldn't drink alcohol, own dogs, or eat bacon?
I wish I could say yes, but no, they failed because they've created an inferior civilization that cannot compete. There was a recent debate Andrew Wilson had with a Muslim apologist named Daniel Akikachu. He pointed out Muhammad married one of his first cousins, and then he married his daughters off to first cousins. So if the prophet is your moral exemplar, you're supposed to do what he can, or do everything that he did as much as you possibly can. We see throughout the Islamic world rampant first cousin marriage, and research shows that lowers IQ. So now in the Islamic world, where places like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Somalia have high rates of cousin marriage, very low IQ. There's not a researcher out there who's looked at this who will not say first cousin marriage doesn't contribute to lower IQ. It clearly does. So because of what Islam set up, it creates inferior civilizations, lowers the collective IQ because of that. It's a ticking time bomb. Eventually, this culture is just going to keep inbreeding so much, it's going to keep making itself intellectually inferior. Meanwhile, what happened in the Christian world? Our ecclesiologies of the early churches, starting about the 500s, started to outlaw cousin marriage. In the Christian world, we have less than 1% cousin marriage. Okay, that's going to collectively raise the IQ. Even where cousin marriage is allowed, Christians don't do it. Why? Because of our ecclesiology and our traditions. We say this is not for the church. So it just creates inferior civilizations at the end of the day. And there's more I can even say on that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So Christians have higher average intelligence, higher IQ than Muslims.
Absolutely, yeah. And Islam fostered a culture that actually hindered the growth of science. People don't realize this. People talk about the golden age of Islam. Well, think about that. That's why don't we just talk about the golden age of Christianity? Because it just keeps getting better in the Christian world. Okay? Islamic world actually treats science differently than the Christian world. Everything needs to be under the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad. So science is only useful as it helps advance Islam. They'll develop trigonometry so they know which way Mecca is, so they know the direction to pray. But once you do that, you don't need it anymore. And this is all documented by scholars like Toby Huff in his book, The Rise of Early Modern Science. So they use the foreign sciences as much as they could. And then once they were done, they discarded it. Meanwhile, the Christian world took as much knowledge as they could and they kept advancing it and they made modern science. So the Islamic world stunted science growth because it was only useful if it advanced Islam. That's going to create an inferior intellectual culture as well. Even scholars like in Spain, for example, like Ibn Rushd, he was persecuted by the Muslim rulers there, and he had to lie and say he'd never read Aristotle. Meanwhile, Ibn Rushd's works were hugely popular throughout Christian Europe. They were rarely used in the Islamic world. They are far more popular in the Christian world because we developed a culture that wanted to advance knowledge, especially in the natural world. The Islamic world didn't. So this is why Islam will never take over the world. There's many reasons I could also give, but these are two very interesting reasons.
Absolutely. You've brought up a subject that I think is really important. I think today, still, there are certain sects of Christians that deny science, when I think that science elevates